Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in tonight's Einstein Analytics video, I'm going to start making good on my 2019 New Year's resolution about actually being more diligent about posting my code and showing people how I'm actually doing the things that I'm describing in my video, making it a little bit easier to follow along with. So at Dreamforce 2018, I was part of a session called Einstein Analytics Dashboard Tips and Tricks, and I thought it went pretty well. But I only demoed for about 5 minutes because I was sharing the stage with 4 other really talented guys, and even with a 40-minute session, you got a lot of material to get through, and I wanted to take a step back and actually walk through not only how to do the tips and tricks that I'm describing and give better examples of the code, but to also show how I built the dashboard and why I took the approach that I did, and some other things that I learned along the way. So here's my section of the session. If you've already seen it, because you're either at Dreamforce or you got the recording from the link in the description, or you just don't care, feel free to skip forward to the timestamp I'm showing you now. Otherwise, here we go.
All right. Hi, everybody. I got a different mic. Got to get used to this. No. All right. So first off, this is a pretty simple dashboard. And what I've done is we've got these deltas here that are dynamically colored based on whether they are going up or going down. We're comparing our performance this year to last year. And over on the right, we also have this year to date and last year to date. And we see as we click through the different options, I go from red and green to double red. Now I got double green. Now they're backwards. So notice also, though, that I've got these up and down carrots here. So I'm going to walk you through how we actually created this. And just like everybody else, I'm actually using Pages for all of this. It makes it really great for especially if you're presenting dashboard. So first, all of these KPIs are driven off of a single compare table. You should always use compare tables when you can. Even if you're going to write SAC, we'll use the compare table as your base. It's going to help you a lot. So we can see even when I make changes here, it's those exact same KPIs. They're all being powered by one compare table. And then to get year to date, I just do a real simple JSON edit. I change year to day, and I change that -1 to -365. That's how I'm able to go from last year's total to last year to date. The different options that we have for our time grains are going to be year, month, day, and week. And we can just go in and edit this manually. And it's a really simple trick that you can't do in the UI, and it's very accessible even if you're not familiar with code. So how did I get the custom color? Now, again, I'm using conditional formatting, just as we saw how Carl was able to highlight the backgrounds of his compare tables. Previously, we would have to actually do this through SACWL, but with the addition of conditional formatting in recent releases, now we're able to do this clicks, not code. It's very simple. So next, how do we actually get those carrots? Well, the full UTF-8 character set is actually supported in Einstein Analytics. The GIF that you're seeing below that, we're actually showing W3 Studios, where I actually got these GIFs from. But these are all just text characters. These are not actually icons or images or anything. It's just regular characters of text. So that's how we get our up and down arrows. Next, we do have to do a little bit of SACWL to be able to dynamically determine whether I'm showing the up arrow or the down arrow. Now notice off on the left, I've got a 999 as a placeholder. So what I'm saying is when 999 is greater than 0, give me an up arrow or a down arrow. And the reason why I'm choosing 999 is because dashboard JSON can be very long. And I just want to go into my code editor and hit Control F and look for 999 because that's where I'm going to put my binding. So our different step was our compare table, and now I'm going to show how I bound into it. And this goes a little bit quickly here, but basically I go and I find that 999, and I'm going to put my binding in here to replace that 999 with the output that's coming from my compare table, so I can tell if that number went up or if that number went down. Next, I'm going to bind into the color. I'm going to try to keep up with this. Double curlies because I'm a binding. My data input is going to take the cell function dot as string. I want to return the output of this cell as a string. Now, which cell do I want? I'm going to bring the cell from the MySQL step that we just saw on the previous screen, and I want the result of that. I want the 0 row, which is the first row of data returned, and I want the column YOY that I created. So then I'm going to copy that binding, I'm going to paste it down a little bit lower, and then I can use the YTD column from that same SQL step to dynamically color the other ones. So that's how I got the color on this. So last but not least, my final tip. Did you know that Einstein Analytics support embedded GIFs? Otherwise, I'm probably the best developer because I did this all without my hands. And this is a feature that's actually been supported since the early days. What can you use this for? You can use this for tutorial dashboards. For example, you could have a page that slides out with a little panel telling people how to actually interact with your dashboards. Or you can include content from your favorite YouTube, such as my Let's Play Salesforce channel. Or this. Never gonna get it.
So let's dig into the meat and bones of this guy. One thing to keep in mind is that the numbers for year to date, as well as this versus prior period for year to date, are not the same as what we saw in the presentation. The reason why is because we're now in the beginning of January 2019 as opposed to the end of September 2018. I did try to clean up the data just a smidge to work to my advantage. And what I did was I just created a simple data flow where I added a year to the field my date and then registered back over that so that I had 2019 and 2018 data. But what I did not do was do anything to kind of account for the fact that it's now January and not September. So, just try to bear with me and follow along. First thing I wanted to show is that we keep saying pages, 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 and that's because pages are really, really awesome. So let me just show a quick example of that. So as I toggle between start and year to date, notice how we get that nice animation effect as my different values are moving around, or as my different KPIs are moving to different positions. So if I were to clone this page, all of these, we're now looking at the clone version over here. These are all the same widgets as before. So if I just started moving stuff around, as I toggle back and forth between those two pages, we get this nice animation of how it actually moves from position 1 to position 2. There's a ton of cool stuff that you can do with this. Check out like the WoW demo, for example, on Tech Lounge. And one of the main reasons pages were actually introduced was to try to help us get away from some of our more simple binding use cases where, I just want something simple like a toggle that changes my grouping or changes my chart type, but I don't necessarily want to have to learn how to do bindings to do that. So pages are at their core intended to give users a much more powerful clicks not code dashboard building experience. And if you're not leveraging them, you probably should. They will get rid of a lot of the toggles that you are creating and just replace them with this really clean interface. So next, one of the things I covered was how I created all of these KPIs with a compare table. And I also said how last year to date and this year to date, I had to actually edit manually in the JSON, which was true at the time. It's no longer true. We do now have the ability to add these same relative date filters that we see on the filter widget. We are able to use all of these, and they do include current year to date and previous year to date. But I'm going to show how I did this again because I can think of other use cases where you might need to make this sort of modification. So Control E to get to my dashboard JSON, Control F to find the step that I'm looking for. I know I named it last year. So last year, this is the step that I originally modified. Basically what I did was I cloned it out, I renamed it as last year YTD, and so then I changed the grain from on the second one to day, and -1 I changed that to 365. So if you're looking for something besides last year to date or this year to date, if you wanted like month to date or whatever, you can make those kind of changes. So this is going to accept any of the date grains that we have available to us. If you have date times, I imagine that you could use hour, minute, second. Never tested it. but you can use year, month, day, quarter, and week, which is really useful. We can also change these operators down here to do inclusive, so or inclusive versus exclusive. So if I only wanted greater than a year ago, I could just do that, but that's greater than equals or greater than or equals to a year ago. So another cool thing to know, we can change around these operators that we have down here. So cancel out of that guy. So the next thing I covered was how all of the KPIs that you're seeing right here are all being powered by one compare table. And there we go. Now it's updating. And I did want to just show that to kind of reinforce the fact that we do always recommend first do it with a compare table. If that doesn't work, then do it with a data flow. And if that doesn't work, then and only then should you be doing it with SQL. But this is just a really simple compare table. So once I had this year to date, last year, and last year to date, I was able to calculate some deltas, and they're extremely simple calculations. All it is A minus C and B minus D respectively. And I can't drive this in enough. The compare table is so powerful. It should always be your first thought when you say, hey, I've got to calculate something. Can I do it with a compare table? And if you're immediately skipping straight forward to SQL, you're probably overcomplicating it. The next thing I covered was conditional formatting. This is really straightforward, but I'll just show it again just real quickly here. So what you want to do is just click on the widget in question, click down in conditional formatting, add a rule, and then you can either specify bins. So what I did was, I did a negative and a positive, and that's going to determine if we're red or green. But we can also put it against specific values. We can also use reference columns. For example, you can have a column that's outputting hex codes or RGBA. You can do it off groupings. So a lot of different stuff that we can do with conditional formatting. All of this we used to have to do with bindings. If you wanted to do, say, the border on a number widget, you're probably still going to want to use bindings and a SQL step to do that. For more information, check out my Dataflow Basics series. I believe it's part 5. That's going to have more information on how to do dynamic coloring on a KPI. The next thing I talked about was how we got the up and down arrows, and the answer to this one is we're just using UTF-8 characters. Fun fact, this is a little bit different than how they looked on, during my demo. And the reason for that is because Mac and PC actually display these differently. It has to do with how Apple interprets these characters as emojis. So if you do want to leverage this, I would recommend, making sure to do a cross-platform comparison and making sure that the image that you're going to present resonates in both platforms. And fun fact, I actually didn't know that until I got up on stage because I'm not really a Mac guy. So it just didn't occur to me that they were going to look radically different. And then I get up there and I'm like, wow, the soccer ball is a soccer ball. So a couple of cool applications that you can have for this. For example, let's say you don't want to put an image on your link widget because you're concerned that it's going to change shape and size based on, different display resolutions that the dashboard is going to be shown on. Well, if you use a UTF-8 character, you're going to get a little bit better support on that. It's one less thing you got to package instead of getting it as a static resource and which is just a real pain. And there's a number of different UTF-8 repositories out there. All you got to do is Google it. There's a ton of them. And we've got all of these different fun characters to play with. And you may not find much of a use for a soccer ball or a chess piece on your dashboard, but I guarantee you that the up and down arrows are very, very useful to have, or even just the refresh symbol, which I'm using in the top left up here on the link widget that goes back to my starting page in case I completely forgot what I was doing or lost my way and wanted to start my demo back over. So where did I actually figure this out? I got this from the Sales Analytics app, which is, a really great thing to digest and dissect if you want to learn SQL or if you want to get into advanced data modeling through data flows. Take apart some of the stuff that Salesforce has built because they've got entire teams of people who have been working on this app for years. And it's extremely well refined, and it's got a lot of nuance and a lot of complexity and a lot to learn from. If you want a really great challenge, take apart the pipeline waterfall. It'll take you a while, but it's really great content. So I strongly recommend leverage the existing assets that you have to teach yourself how to do the things that you want to do. So now we're actually getting into some pretty cool stuff. Let's take a look at the SACL that I use to get these arrows to point up or down. So I'm showing that on this page. And yes, I am totally using a different set of arrow characters. I changed my mind midway through. But let's take a look at how that is built. So exit out of full screen, hit E to edit. And I've already gone ahead and cloned my SACL, which is the step that you're seeing below here, as clone of my SACL. And the reason for this is that there's bindings in the step, and once you have bindings in a step, you can't edit it anymore. So I did have to clone it, and what I'm going to get instead is what that binding is currently returning. So in this case, it's going to be a 29. So I'm going to update that to 1, 2, 3, 4, because I'm already using 999 elsewhere. Hit run query and hit update. And now when I hit Control E, Control F, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to take me right to that step very quickly. So why do we do this at all? Well, I mean, I got 4,000 plus lines of JSON on a relatively simple dashboard, and unless you've been doing this stuff for a really long time, at a glance, this is all just mumbo jumbo, jargon. You know, it's really hard to follow until you get used to it. So we use these placeholders so that we can quickly navigate to where it is that we're trying to put in the binding. So then, if I wanted to take a look at the original SACL step, I'll just look for it by name. And let's take a closer look at the binding that I'm actually using. So this is the result of the my compare table, column E, that I'm pulling from. And I find that this particular binding tends to confuse a lot of people, and some of the greats out there. I remember discussing this like a year and a half ago, and like people were having trouble with, how do I bind the result of a compare table into something else because I'm looking for like some underscore amount. Well, it's not some underscore amount anymore. It's A or it's B. Now we actually have the ability to change the API names of columns that we create with compare tables, which is really awesome for leveraging custom formatting on derived dimensions if we kick it over to SACL or whatever we're doing. But you are, when you just create a simple compare table and you do want to pull values out of that for reference or for results binding, you are going to want to reference it by the column's letter unless you've taken the extra step of changing the API name of that column. So right here we see basically I'm just saying, hey, for each queue generate case when I've got my binding greater than 0, give me an up arrow, else give me a down arrow, end as year over year, and then I do the same thing to give myself year to date so that I can have those as up or down arrows. And now if this was the olden days where we still did conditional coloring on number widgets through bindings, I would be using, I'd probably use this same step to give myself either the hex or RGB value that I wanted to output as the color for that step. But hey, it's the modern era. We're past summer 18. We now have conditional formatting. So odds are I'm just going to leverage that instead. So it's all well and good that I have this step, but it's not doing anything right now. It's just off by itself doing a thing. We actually need to get this to appear on our number widgets. So let me show you how I did that. I'm going to look for my SACL again, and this is where we're going to find it. So on my KPIs, which were number 8 and number 9, this is what I did was I just bound into the title. And one of the really cool takeaways here is that we don't actually have to just have the binding control the entire thing. The binding is just part of a string. So I can say like, give me just the binding and then the hard-coded values of versus prior period. Or let's say that my period was dynamic and I had a toggle switch that let me switch between year, quarter, and month. I could output, instead of prior period, I could have a different SACL step or part of the static selector that I'm using that would put in the word year, the word month, or the word day, or whatever I wanted into that label as well. Another really cool thing, if you want to take this concept even further, is that we can use multiple bindings to create whatever kind of strings we want. So for example, I had a dashboard that I built once where we wanted to toggle between viewing things at the account level or viewing things at the parent account level. So all of our field names were the same. It's just instead of having account.type, I would have parent.account.type. So I actually bound the parent dot dynamically and said either give me parent.account or give me account based on the return of a simple static step. So the last tip that I covered was that Einstein Analytics does in fact support animated GIFs and has since, as far as I know, since day one. And this does have pretty narrow use cases. So far, the only things I've come up with are either for a tutorial dashboard or for rickrolling your Dreamforce 2018 audience. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this a little bit more is because that people, ask me, especially when I post on the community with like click-through paths, how do you get these animated GIFs? So this is by no means an endorsement, but this is the program that I use for the vast majority of my GIFs. This is called Screen to GIF. It's a free app that is available at screentogif.com. But get ready for disappointment if you are a Mac user, because it is a Windows-only program. Now and again, not an endorsement here, but Snagit does also support capturing a portion of your screen and saving the recording as a GIF. And I do use Snagit and Camtasia for my video recording and editing. Again, it's not an endorsement, it's just a matter of fact. It's just one to use. Is there other great software out there that you can use for it? Yeah, but this is what I've got, and that's what I'm using. So that's all I got for tonight. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.